One murder every 30.5 minutes. One robbery every 1.7 minutes. One assault every 21.7 minutes. And over 85,000 active missing people. Crime happens anywhere and anytime. Thousands of unsolved cases causing time to stand still for its victims. The crime clock is ticking. The alarm has sounded. It's time for crime time.
And it is time for crime time.
This is Jerry
Jean, and I've got Stacy Smith and Sarah Block with me, and we've got a new case to talk about today, and it has to do with a brand new trial that just started today.
Oh.
There was a murder trial will begin on Monday, September 30th with Amber Guyger, 31, who is accused of killing Botham Jean of Dallas, Texas on September 6, 2018. Amber is a former Dallas police officer. According to the Dallas News, Amber entered Bonham's home and fatally shot him because she thought she was in her own apartment.
I remember that story.
Sam was an intruder. So I thought I would start right off and let you guys listen to the 911 call where you'll hear Amber and the what do you call those the people that are on the end?
The 911.
Oh my gosh, the dispatcher. And you'll hear the dispatcher, and it'll be Amber right after she had shot Botham Jean. Here we go.
Yeah, this is Carla. Where's your emergency?
Hi, this is off-duty officer. I need emails. I'm in number.
Do you need police as well or just EMS?
Yes, I need both.
Okay, what's the address?
I'm at apartment number 1478. I'm in 1478.
And what's the address there?
It's 1210 South Lamar, 1478. Yes.
What's going on?
I'm an off-duty officer. I thought it was in my apartment, and I shot a guy thinking it was my apartment.
He shot someone?
Yes, I thought it was my apartment. I'm fucked. Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Okay, and where are you at right now?
I'm in, what do you mean? I'm inside the apartment with him. Hey, come on.
What's your name?
I'm Amber Guyger. I need to get me, I'm in.
Okay, we have help on the way.
I know, but I'm gonna lose my job. I thought it was my apartment.
Okay, and
Amen.
Hold on.
Fuck.
Okay, stay with me, okay?
I am. I need supervisor. Hey, bud. Hey, bud. Hey, bud. Come on. Fuck. I thought it was my apartment.
I understand. We have help on the way, okay?
Hurry, please.
They're on their way.
I thought it was my apartment. I could have sworn I parked on the third floor.
Okay, I understand.
No. I thought it was my apartment. I thought it was my apartment. I thought it was my apartment. I thought it was my apartment.
And then what's the gate code there?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
I thought it was my apartment.
They're trying to get in there. We have an officer there. You don't know the gate code?
No. I thought it was my apartment.
Okay, and what floor are you in right now?
The fourth floor. Hey, bud, they're coming. I'm sorry, man.
Okay, where was he shot?
He's on the top left.
top left what?
I think
Part
she
of
was
the body?
describing which
left.
TV, right? Yes.
which apartment. I think she didn't answer where he was shot.
Oh my God, I'm done. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. Hey, bud. They're trying to get there to you, okay? I know. Stay with me, bud. Oh, fuck. They're almost there. They're already there. They're trying to get to you. Oh, fuck. I thought it was my apartment. I thought it was my apartment. Holy fuck. I thought it was my apartment. Oh my God. Fuck. I'm so sorry.
It's almost done.
They're trying to get there to you. Do you hear them? Do you hear them? No. No. How the fuck did I put it out? How did I see this for? I'm too tired. Honey. Over here. Okay, go ahead and talk to me. No, it's me. I'm off duty. I thought they were in my apartment. I thought this was my floor.
Whoa, that was it.
Wow.
So she states that she parked on the wrong floor and went into the wrong apartment. She said that Botham ignored her verbal commands, so she shot him twice in the chest. Botham Jean was 26 years old. He worked at the PricewaterhouseCoopers in Dallas, and he lived in the same apartment as Amber, but his apartment was directly above hers. So my question is, do you believe her story? Do you think it was an accident?
I believe her.
I believe her.
All right, you guys look pretty upset.
But
Yeah.
I do wonder how she parked on the wrong floor. Like at the end of the 911 call, she mentions being tired, and I could see someone being exhausted for the impact of some horrible tragedy, like accidentally killing someone, shooting someone, whatever the case was at that moment. But I wonder, was she tired when she got home to have parked on the wrong floor of the garage?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing, Sarah, but I was thinking along the lines, I'm really bad when I'm on the road, if I'm going any distance, I'll have the radio on, or I'll even, especially if, I get a phone call or something, and I'm distracted, and so my mind is not on, and I'll miss a turn, and so I've done something very similar to I did not go into someone's apartment, but I come out of Walmart, and I had a white SUV, and it was a very common it was a Ford, but there was a million of them. It didn't matter where you were. If you were, any given grocery store, there would be at least 5 or 6 other vehicles exactly like that, painted the same. But I got all the way in to someone else's vehicle and sat down, and it was when I looked over into the console, and I saw that that was not my stuff. And what's weird is I always park pretty much in the same the same spot, and they were in my spot. They shouldn't have parked in my spot. I wouldn't have gotten their vehicle. No, I mean, I got out of there so quick because I thought, oh my goodness, I panicked because I thought, what if they walk out and I'm in their vehicle and they think I'm trying to steal it or steal something in it? So I got out of there. And, but it's, yes, I could see where, we don't have parking garages here. And so that's something that I'm not that familiar with. So anytime that we go to like Las Vegas or someplace like that where there are these parking garages, I'm always kind of, making sure I pay attention what floor I'm on, because I think that I'm going to get lost or the airport, I'm that one that, makes sure that I know what parking garage and what, aisle and all that. So
I have another question for you guys though too. This is what's kind of going on through my mind. I see a lot of protocol when it comes to guns, and they're taught that you.
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm sorry. Well, let me try that again. They have a certain protocol with the gun, and they have to, when they pull their gun, they have to say all these commands. They can't shoot. Do you think that she was a little quick on the shooting? I mean, was there another option? Now, I can hear my husband right now going, oh, she's got a gun. She's not going to be thinking about it. Because I'm thinking, why didn't she back out of the apartment? Was she right at the front door and she saw the person? Then why did she run and get back out? But when you're a police officer, you're not supposed to run. You're the one that's supposed to be standing and getting these people.
Well, but here's the thing. She was not on duty. So she wasn't acting as a police officer. I think she was acting as a woman she thought she was in her own apartment and that there was an intruder. And so I don't think that that her guidelines as a police officer. I don't know that the courts may look at that differently, but in my opinion, I think that she was acting as a citizen who thought that there was an intruder. And one thing, it seems like that on the 911 call that you heard the different stages, and she definitely was in shock. But she was remorseful. I mean, you could tell, this wasn't something that she, like she had a problem with this kid. And so she set all of this up because, you could see that this was not planned, and that she, right from the start, she was remorseful. And I think that if she does get taken to court on this, that any jury would be able to sympathize and empathize with her, because I know just listening to it, my heart went out to her because I thought, how terrible, because she's got to live with this. And I think it was a terrible accident.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting when we first start the video, before the dispatcher answers, the first thing they catch her saying is, "Get up, man." That is not a very sympathetic thing to say when you just shot somebody. So before the dispatcher came on, before, she doesn't know she was being recorded at that point, and the first thing comes out, and what she says is, "Get up, man."
But
and
she may have.
Do you think she meant it? Do you think she meant it like, kind of like trying to take it back? Oh no, get up, or like.
Could be, yeah. Let me listen to her voice again.
I'm trying to think of an example of that,
like, don't die on me.
Yeah, that like when you
man.
see on the movie Cops, like someone, like they've shot someone, or they've just walked in and found someone in that condition. They're like, no, don't get up, you can do that. Almost more like she was, can we hear that again by chance, Jerry?
What, the get up,
she says that?
Yeah, it's real quick. It's right at the very beginning, and I can't get the volume up anymore. But here, listen for a second. You hear the ringing, then you'll hear her say it.
Okay.
Get up, man. Get up, stop.
You hear her? Get up, man. It wasn't. I'll do it again.
Yeah, it's 911 because the car number is your emergency.
You know,
On,
it didn't sound very like commanding or demanding. You know, it was like almost like
Get up.
well, she could have still been in the mind frame, like she still could have been in a mind frame of maybe not having even recognized yet that she wasn't in her own apartment. Um, Here's what I read. She might still be in that mind frame of I'm calling 911 for this intruder I just shot. She might still
And
be in
she
that.
might not realize even if he's you know, if he has passed away or if he was still you know what I mean, she might not have checked his situation yet, so
So
you know
she
that
goes.
might have
So
been.
when she makes that call, my question is, when does she realize where she's at? That she's not in her apartment before she calls dispatcher? While she's talking to the dispatcher?
I think the gravity of it hits her while she's already on the call. I think the panic comes out when she sounds like a robot repeating the same line majority of the call. Here's what I read that
She
night.
also knows that she could potentially be in trouble because did you hear she says
Oh yeah,
I'm
it's my job.
effed, you know,
It,
and
it said
so
Miss Geiger was returning home after working a 14-hour shift. She said in court documents that when she opened the door, the apartment was dark and she saw a silhouette of someone she thought was a burglar. She shouted commands that were ignored. Neighbors have told lawyers for Mr. Jean's relatives that they heard someone banging and shouting, "Let me in, open up," before gunshots rang out. Some
Mm.
neighbors disputed her contention that it was too dark to see. The other thing I had read was something like when she went to go open what she thought was her door, that it was ajar. So maybe this is where the big question of did she enter what she thought was her apartment and wonder why the door was loose, and she's a trained a trained police officer who's I'm thinking I have a visual of her being in uniform and having her weapon right ready to grab and dislodge.
And
And
you gotta think too. What would she be doing there anyway? I mean, why would she be, if this was not her apartment, why would she intentionally go to somebody else's apartment unless she knew the person there, right? Or unless maybe
and
she
you
saw
said
them
this is
down
her apartment is located right
directly underneath, yeah.
underneath, and so I mean, so it is plausible that I mean, you know, it makes sense. It wasn't like she was 3 apartments down or something. I mean, you could see where she just was on the wrong floor and walked. I mean, you know, situationally, it fits with her story.
Yeah. Well, right now we only have Amber's version of the story because the other
Now,
person is
did
dead.
you did you say, Sarah, that that someone heard someone knocking and saying, "Let me in"?
that was some accounts from some neighbors thinking they heard banging on a door before gunshots. So there's people who don't believe her account. They're questioning if you really came up to what you thought was your door and found it was ajar or not fully closed or locked, and you became suspicious as a law enforcement officer, that you there would be no reason to be banging on doors to say let me in.
And why would you go in?
Well, and also I
But
wonder
now,
if did
would
she live
there,
alone.
if she does live alone, you said?
I wonder. I don't know, but I do have some visuals of um, the apartment. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I can post
Yeah.
them on
Yeah.
our website. But there's one that kind of shows a piece of a parking garage.
Oh yeah, it is those, you know, and you know, you keep going in circles. You know what I mean? And so it's like each floor is not that distinct. You know what I mean? Because you're
They look
just
like pretty high rise, fancy, nice places. But I mean,
right.
I haven't read the facts, but I wonder if she was a single that lived alone in terms of being on heightened alert. But that
But then
doesn't
and then it
match.
wouldn't make sense that she would be knocking on the door saying, "Let me in." If I mean,
Right.
if she now if she had a spouse or a roommate, then you could see where, she might walk up to, her apartment, knock, instead of, maybe her hands were full, had groceries or something, and didn't want to have to get her keys, and said, hey, let me in, and kind of knocked or something. But if she lived alone, it doesn't make sense that she would be knocking at all. Now, one thing does kind of come to my mind. The only thing that I could possibly think that could, and I'm just putting this out there as crazy scenario, okay? Let's suppose that, how when you live below someone, you hear their footsteps. In an apartment, you hear everything. Sometimes things you don't want to hear. And, you're a tired police officer, and, you've worked hard, and you're trying to get some sleep. And, how old was he? 26. The 26-year-old, maybe say he's playing some music kind of loud, or he's got some friends coming over. I mean, you could see where maybe a 26-year-old, I call that a kid. I know they're in a, that's an
And
adult
she's
age.
only 5 years older than him.
But sometimes that's a world apart when you're talking. You know what I mean? 5 years sometimes can be, because they do say. Well, I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to skip right over that. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
We're young things.
But you know what? So, I mean, that 5 years could have been substantial, especially when you're talking about being 26 and then being in your 30s. Sometimes that, where you're at in life could totally be different. She has it, she's a career, has a career. She's a police officer. And so, I mean, I have seen some pretty crazy wars over people stomping or just being, and I am totally, this is a completely made up scenario by me, that I didn't see this or read this. I'm just saying, if you want to think, okay, could something have set off this neighbor war? What's the movie with, is it Michael Keaton and the couple buys the,
I don't know remember that one, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, they buy the it's in an adjoining, it's an older home, but it's split up, and yes, and then he terrorizes them. I mean, he's this, yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
It could happen.
Yeah, well, there is also the prosecution is going after her, and they're pointing out that she put a lot of posts on social media that were aggressive, I suppose you would say, and one of them that the Guardian pointed out was, in quotes, was what she wrote, in quotes, "People are so ungrateful. No one ever thanks me for having the patience not to kill them," close quotes.
Oh,
That's a kind of aggressive thing to be saying, especially in her position. When people know you're walking around with a gun all the time, that's not the kind of thing that you would bring up or even say on social media.
This was said, Jerry, this was said after this event had happened?
No. This is on her social media. This is the kind of things that she would post on social media. This is an example. This was before the incident.
Well, I would almost be willing to bet that her viewpoint has changed.
Yeah.
And I would even, I mean, I'm guessing that she probably said that, and it wasn't a very sensitive thing to say. It wasn't, certainly it wasn't politically correct, and she probably didn't completely mean it. There might have been a little sarcasm in there, or you know what I mean. They have to have those days where maybe they run into every stupid person on the street. You know what I mean? When you have one of those days, and I mean, it has to be frustrating for police officers, and so I don't know. I mean, I don't agree at all with what she said. That was not, I mean, she shouldn't have said that at all.
Well, initially she was charged with manslaughter, and now she is charged with murder.
What made the difference? What
I don't know.
It?
The investigation, I would assume, by the police.
It said some neighbors disputed her contention that it was too dark to see inside the apartment, stating the lighting in the hallway is bright and illuminates the inside of the apartments when doors are open. Another little interesting thing is that the Dallas Police Department headquarters is a block away from these apartments. But that kind of is interesting for how quick the response time
Oh,
was.
it seemed to be pretty quick. Yeah.
But also, Miss Geiger had been involved in a previous shooting where that case, a man had grabbed her taser during a confrontation and she shot him in the stomach. He survived. The grand jury declined to indict her.
In
yeah,
the stomach. Ooh.
Well, if you're having
Isn't that a death shot? I mean, when you're shot in the stomach or stabbed in the stomach, that's,
They're close enough for him to grab her taser and have that kind of a tumble. So Mr. Gene, he was going to watch a football game that night. He had texted his sister, and he is from St. Lucia, the island in the Caribbean. And it sounds like he went out of his way to avoid any kind of confrontation with police or anybody judging him for the color of his skin. And his family would say, "Why do you dress so fancy?" And he's like, "I don't want to be pulled over." So they kind of paint a picture of a single man about to watch football games. I'm not sure about her commands that were ignored, but I'm wondering, where was he in the apartment? Because if it was a one bedroom apartment, one of the little layouts shows like the kitchen is near the front door and then a living room and then a bedroom off of the living room. That's one of the layouts. So I kind of wonder, what was this where she thought as a off-duty police officer that he wasn't listening to whatever command she shouted, which I kind of wonder about neighbors hearing
and
shouts.
he's in his own apartment, and so he's probably thinking, who is this crazy lady trying to tell me what to do in my own apartment?
It sounds like he didn't have his door locked, which the thing is if it was locked, like we were talking about, if she lived alone, you would have no reason to bang and say, "Open up," where her account is she starts to unlock her door and realizes it was, like it's opening for her without having a reason to be unlocked. So technically, if she wasn't an off-duty police officer, if it was me, I would be like, "Why is my door?" I would be more.
Wait a minute. Think, did I leave my door unlocked?
You're supposed to call for backup as a regular citizen to not enter what could be the threat. But here she is, probably in the position of being trained to handle a threat, and she knows if it's the same as hers, a one-bedroom apartment.
If he was in that, if she could see a silhouette and she had opened the door, it would be interesting to know how far in. It may have just been that initial, the door open and there she is standing there and she sees him and shoots. She may not have went, like 10 steps forward or something, towards him, how kind of like those open apartments, from the door, you could certainly see, someone if they were anywhere in that open area.
Yeah.
You would think.
I'm assuming she wasn't in uniform.
Maybe not. But if she'd come off a 14-hour shift and she's only a block from the headquarters, I don't know if officers touch base with the headquarters or, if you're in a squad car. But yeah, I don't know the chain of events for her getting off her shift or how, whenever she was still in the 911 call, it seemed like she was quick to say, "I'm off duty." But I wonder if they thought, for example, what if she was in uniform and they thought someone got there before them, a different officer?
Wait a minute, though.
She was clarifying.
Because when they got there, they thought an officer was there, so she was in her uniform.
I'm wondering. Here's another thing.
Well, on the 911 tape, you could hear I mean, didn't it sound like she was still in her uniform?
I,
Because she said no, I'm off duty. I was in the wrong apartment. Like they almost thought that there was already a police officer there.
So during the trial, they're wanting her cell phone records, web searches, and text messages from the night that she fatally shot her neighbor to be admissible during her murder trial. One of the headlines on NBCnews.com, it says Amber Guyger was on the phone with her partner before shooting the neighbor, prosecutor reveals. And then it says she was in a sexual relationship with her partner on the police force, and the pair were on the phone the night of the shooting.
wonder what they were talking about.
Right.
I think that that they should be able to get the. I mean, just like with anyone else, anyone else's phone records would be. And so I think that it should be admissible. I think they should be able to see what's going on.
Absolutely, but
what her state of mind was.
This guy's dying, and she calls her boyfriend.
Well,
what the fuck? I'm sorry.
Well,
did she?
Let me call my boyfriend first to see what I should do about this shit. You know,
she did?
And then
or you're just saying that's possible.
Well, it's just saying.
It seems like that whole 911 was a big old freaking phony, cry fest crocodile tears now, because you would think about calling your boyfriend. What are you calling your boyfriend for? So he'll come over and help, or he'll help get rid of the body, or what? You call the police. You get 911 up there, try to save the guy's life.
It didn't state anything about calling after the shooting. It just stated.
You're just saying like earlier in the night.
It says on the phone with her partner before shooting the neighbor. So prior to
the 911 call would have picked up her calling. I mean.
Well, yeah, right? They're just trying to release. Clear. Okay, so you're saying it's not clear whether she called him first and then 911. We don't know exactly now.
They're trying to show her state of mind. So even on the call, she mentions being tired, and we know she came off of a long shift. Actually, I'm curious what time of the night this happened. If he was about to watch a football game, like if someone went to work at 6 a.m. and it's like 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock at night. What time? Yeah, I forget when. I don't watch football that much.
I really have not made up my mind completely on this. I'm a little bit torn because I do think she was genuine on the 911 call. I think she was shocked, and I think it was an accident. I also think that she just somehow ended up in the wrong apartment. I've like I said, I've lost the count on those garages but even so, someone lost their life. And she is responsible. And so I think this is going to be one of those cases where it's really difficult to figure out what is the correct verdict or whatever.
Yeah.
I do think that intent is one of the things that will be looked at, and it's one of the things that we should look at when we're trying to decide how we feel about it. Did she intend to hurt someone? Did she intend to go into the wrong apartment and shoot someone? And I think that the answer is clearly no. Jerry, this might be a good one to try to find out from some of our viewers. How did they feel? I would love to hear from our listeners and our viewers. And how do y'all feel? Well, I mean, because we're wanting our listeners to either message us or get in touch with, email us, go to our website, go to our Facebook
and
page.
Subscribe. Everybody subscribe.
Subscribe. Yes. And let us know, how they feel about it. We want to know what their opinion is.
Yeah.
I'll go post the pictures, but here's also one at murder trial, the former police officer.
Okay. That's
Amber.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for this week, and we will see everybody next week. And
thank you, Jerry.
Check
Thank
out
you, Stacy.
subscribe,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for subscribing.
Until next
All right.
time.
All right, see you next time.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey.
The views expressed on this podcast are personal opinions only. While all attempts are made to present accurate information, it may not be appropriate for your specific circumstances, and information may become outdated over time. Crime Time Podcast does not assume any liability with regard to results based on the use of information provided here. Furthermore, advertisers, commentators, and linked sites are solely responsible for their views and content, which does not necessarily represent the views of Crime Time. We welcome you to download and play the podcast and share with others for personal use. Please acknowledge the Crime Time Podcast as the source of the material. You may not, except with our express written permission, distribute or commercially exploit the content. The information is provided by Crime Time Podcast. We endeavor to keep the information up to date and correct. We make no representations or warranties of any kind, express or implied, about the completeness, accuracy, reliability, suitability, or availability with respect to the website or the information, products, services, or related graphics contained on the website for any purpose. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. Thank you. And by all means, shove a few more words into these paragraphs so that I have to read complicated, comma-placed statements throughout an entire document and then try to record it in one take.